Hey, what's going on? Ryan Nolting here. With Intersection Records, we are going to rank the albums of Thin Lizzy today. This is a tough one. I've been working on this for a while, and these guys are one of my favorite bands. And you know, this is a tough one because there's really not a bad album. There's 12 studio albums, and of course the famous Live and Dangerous live album, which I'm not including. There's 8 albums out of these 12 that could be number one, and I've gone back and forth. I'm finally settling on a list. I know there's people out there that have this lineup. This band was formed by Phil Lynott, Eric Bell, and Brian Downing in 1969, and they worked all the way up until their last studio album, 83. I think they technically broke up in like 85. And Phil Lynott is the bass player and lead singer. They're an Irish band. Check out my show, The Outsiders, where I do a bio basically on Phil Lynott, who is the, again, lead singer. In the United States, this band is most famous for the song The Boys Are Back in Town, which is a great song, but it's hardly a complete representation of how great this band is. They had Dancing in the Moonlight, which was another minor hit in the United States. We're going to go through almost track by track every song in this catalog, and this could get long. And again, it's hard to distinguish between some of these albums because they're so good. They are obviously they're an Irish band. There's some Irish folk going on. There's some hard rock, certainly. There's even some heavy metal. And then there's definitely, almost every album has a ballad. And this is like hair metal, power ballad stuff. It's love songs that Phil wrote primarily. Phil was the primary songwriter in this band. Of course, everybody kind of contributes a little bit. We won't get into all the gory details on who wrote what. And Phil's a part of every song. Whether Scott Gorman or Gary Moore or Brian Robertson or John Sykes or Eric Bell or Downey, the drummer himself. By the way, Brian Downey is one of the best drummers of all time. Check out my top 50 drummers list. Brian Downey is absolutely on that list. We're going to start off. My least favorite is their second record. Okay. Shades of a Blue Orphanage. This came out in March of 72. Again, it's their second album. It's on the Decca label. Starts off with the song, The Rise and Dear Demise of Funky Nomadic Tribes. Heavy drumming on this first track. It's a 7-minute killer, groovy song. Again, the drumming by Brian Downey is incredible. They're growing from the debut album. This is the second record. Huge solo by Eric Bell. It's a journey. The second song, Buffalo Gal, not as good. Third song, I Don't Want to Forget How to Jive. It's kind of a 50s throwback. Phil definitely is influenced by Elvis, influenced by, well, of course, think about growing up in the 50s and 60s, and you're definitely going to be going back to some of the forefathers of rock. Sarah, a song about his grandmother. Mellow. It's way mellow. It's a piano ballad. Brought Down is the last song on the first side. Picks up the pace a little. Flipping the album over. Babyface, cohesive and heavy. The next song, Chatting Today. It's acoustic. Not my favorite. Call the Police is the next song. Let's Go. It's riffy, and it's sounding like what Thin Lizzy would become soon thereafter. And then the 7-minute Shades of a Blue Orphanage. Not going out as strong. Kind of a melancholy song. Phil was born black in Ireland, and at that time, being black and being in Ireland, he had a lot of racial issues. In fact, his mother had to give him to his grandmother because she had to find work. Whiskey in a Jar is not on one of their albums. It's one of their famous songs which is an old traditional folk song that was done during these sessions, but not on the album. My next album is the debut. Okay, this is just called Thin Lizzy. This comes out in April of '71. Again, all songs written by Phil Lynott, but some other contributions. The first song, Friendly Ranger of Clontarf Castle. It's a spoken word song. It's hippie. It's kind of Donovan-y. It's very folky. This whole album is Honey Is No Excuse, Strings, Diddy Levine, again, mellow. Bell on Ray Gun does a kind of a Hendrixy guitar thing. Eric Bell is on the first 3 albums. Great guitar player. Look What the Wind Blew In sounds like vintage Lizzy to me. Okay, it's the last song on the first side. Flip the album over, you got Eerie, very Irish, Celtic Journey. Another great song on this record is Remembering. It's a 6-minute song. At the 1 minute and 48 second mark, it really takes off. Lots of weed in the studio, they said. So much weed, they were high the whole time. Eric Bell, Brian Downey, and Phil Lynott. Coming in next on my ranking is the first album with the second lineup, which features Scott Gorham and Brian Robertson on guitar. You still have Brian Downing on drums and Phil, of course. This comes out in November of '74. Nightlife album, of course, their 4th record. It's produced by Ron Nevison. She Knows. Awesome song. Just a injection of heavy guitars. The sound is filling out here. It's a great opener, a confident vocal by Phil. Other highlights on this record, Still in Love with You, okay? Gary Moore does the solo on this. Gary Moore, it's the only part that he plays on this album. Gary Moore comes in and out of this band 3 times. Helps out on tours. He does one album, and we'll get to that album here in a bit. Flip the record over, Showdown, just a bass intro, a pimpy style, shuffle blues, and then it gets poppy, R&B. It's really cool. Certainly drugs seem to be moving in at this album. The twin guitars on Banshee are cool. Almost Allman Brothers-y at the 1 minute and 27 second mark. One I circled as one of the greats on this is Shalala, just harnessing that Lizzy sound. And then the last song is softer, Dear Heart, strings. Interesting song. On Still in Love with You, Gary, not only is Gary Moore on, but it's a duet with a guy named Frankie Miller. Another thing on this album, Nightlife. It's a take on the Willie Nelson song, Nightlife. Willie Nelson's not credited on this record, but he should be. Coming in next is Vagabonds of a Western World. This is the 3rd record. This comes out in September of '73. This thing is awesome. The artwork, by the way, look at that. Artwork is done by a guy named Jim Fitzpatrick. This is the last album to feature Eric Bell from the original lineup. Mother Nature's Said is a solid opener, but the next song, The Hero and the line Madness, is just a cool spoken word. A guy named Kip Jensen does some spoken word in the beginning. Then it just really gets badass and kind of Doorsy feel to it. Slow Blues is the next song. It's a stoner blues song. And then the majestic song, The Rocker. Probably the first great song. Scorching guitars, Taking No Prisoners. Flip the album over and you have Vagabonds of the Western World. Prodding, riffy, Attitude for Days, Phil and this power trio, just kick ass. Little Girl in Bloom, strong vocal by Phil, a very mature writing. Even early in their career, Phil's writing is mature. They don't fully harness their sound until the 4th or 5th album, but man, it's good. Very good record. Moving on to my next favorite. This is the album with Gary Moore. So this is called Black Rose. It comes out in April of 79. Okay. And we'll get to, Brian Robertson's gone. Scott Gorman's still in the band. So you have Gorman on guitar, Gary Moore, Brian Downing, and Phil Lynott. Tony Visconti and Thin Lizzy produced this. This is their 9th record. Do Anything You Want. This is a strong rock song. And there's a tribute to Elvis. He says, Elvis is dead at the end. Elvis is dead. And kind of has Elvis's accent. Toughest Street in Town's the next. Again, very strong. S&M, solid. Waiting on an Alibi, twin guitars. So they're famous for that twin guitar. Na, 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 na. Think about that on Boys Are Back in Town. Sarah, one of my favorite ballads. Again, every album has a ballad that Phil writes. Sarah is great. It's about his daughter, who was newly born at the time. Flip the album over. Gotta Give It Up. It's clearly about drugs. And Phil ends up passing away in 86 from complications of heart failure and drug use and alcohol. The last song on this record is an epic Irish traditional, but a Thin Lizzy song called Black Rose. It's got multiple parts. It's just one of the great Thin Lizzy albums. Moving on. Chinatown. So this is the album that's after Black Rose. It's an album that features Scott Gorham still on guitar, of course, and Snowy White, who was he was never an official member of Pink Floyd, but starting with the Animals tour and the Wall tour, Snowy White was a guitar player there. And Snowy White still played with Roger Waters into the 2000s. This thing is incredible. Kit Wooven is the producer. This comes out in October of 80. It is their 10th album. Will Be Strong is the first song. Phil's talking. Just strong hooks. Snowy White's making himself known here. Chinatown's the next song. Great song. Again, about drugs. Sold You a Dream in Chinatown. They sold you the dream. The drugs were the dream. And Phil, unfortunately, is the buyer and user. Sweetheart. Working the formula. Working the Thin Lizzy formula. The formula is working. Sugar Blues. Brian Downey, Loose, Snowy White, again, Sugar Blues, drug reference. The last song on the first side is Killer on the Loose, and it's just pure Thin Lizzy. Live and dangerous. Great production and engineering by Kit Wolven. Phil's on the Loose, just about midnight, which is, to me, it's a Van Morrison, push. Van Morrison, of course, is from Ireland as well. Flip the album over, having a good time. Just incredible. Phil and his boys kicking some ass. And he calls out Snowy White by name and Scott and Brian. He knows he's got a good band. Gary Moore's left for the 3rd time, and he has a good band here. The next song is Genocide. The Killing of the Buffalo. Just brutal and one of the best songs they ever did. Finishes up with Deny and Hey You. Good songs, great album. Coming in next, also a Tony Visconti and Thin Lizzy produced album from 1977, Bad Reputation. You'll notice Phil, Scott Gorham, and Brian Downing. Brian Robertson had kind of been kicked out of the band, but Brian Robertson plays on 3 songs in this album. Scott does a lot of the heavy lifting of guitars, a lot of doubling of guitars. But again, even though Brian's not pictured here, he's on this record. This thing's amazing. Soldier of Fortune is a good opener. Twin axes, doubled by Scott Gorham. Bad Reputation, love it. Dangerous, ballsy. Opium Trail, killer guitars. Brian Robertson plays on this. Robo, we'll call him Robo from here on out. It was his nickname, Robo, on guitar on this song, plus 2 others. Just killer. Southbound, again, feeling it upbeat. And then Dancing in the Moonlight is the first song on the second side. A classic. One of the better ballads that they ever did. Killer Without a Cause. Again, Robo and Scott on guitars. Modern metal sounding. This is pre-Metallica, you know, really pre-Van Halen. Killer. New wave of British heavy metal. I can hear it here. Downtown Sounddown. It's a ballad. The Woman's Gonna Break Your Heart. The solo saves the day here by Robo. And then Dear Lord. It's a prayer. You know, Phil's a deeply religious guy. He loves his Catholicism and his Irish roots. And he's a killer bass player and a great singer. Coming in next. Some people rank this higher. I've ranked this higher before. Fighting. Recorded in Olympic Studios. Produced by Phil Lynott. So this is the first album, in my opinion, in September of 75, where they really take off and sound like a band. That's Robo. That's Scott Gorham. That's Phil Lynott. And that's Brian Downey on drums. This thing's amazing. Bob Seger cover starts it. Rosalie, just incredible. The drumming, the guitars. It's just incredible. The next song, For Those Who Love to Live, full-blown Lizzy. So by this album, the fifth album, they are full in flight, Thin Lizzy. Suicide's the next one. Attitude for Days, just amazing guitars. Wild One. The first side of this album is probably the best side of music the band ever did. Fighting My Way Back. Again, Brian Downing's so underrated on drums. This first side of this album is one of the best things they ever did. The second side, not as much, but there's a slight fall off on King's Vengeance, but I listened to it again last night. This is great too. I mean, Spirit Slips Away, Phil, another ballad by Phil. Really takes off at the 2-minute and 20-second mark for 25 seconds, and it's back to a ballad. Silver Dollar, awesome. Freedom Song, and then the Ballad of a Hard Man. Scott Gorham helped with that song. It is freaking kick-ass and funky. Just really cool song. Killer riff. First side, unbelievable. Second side, not quite as good. The next album on my list of top Thin Lizzy. By the way, subscribe to my channel. Check out my videos every day. Really appreciate everybody that's subscribed and the comments that I get every day. Jailbreak. Incredible album. Opens up with Jailbreak. Just a classic song. Stone cold classic. Perfect chorus. Raunchy. A march. Perfection. They break out with a whistle at the 2-minute and 19-second mark. Angel from the Coast. Slow boogie ballad. Awesome. Running Back. Phil's pop sensibility. I mean, Phil is able to write songs in almost every genre. Romeo and the Lonely Girl, you know, maybe not quite as good. But then you have Warriors, just darker. Again, probably drug references here. He's serving the death machine. Robo is a monster on that song. Twin lead. Flip the album over and you got Boys Are Back in Town. You know, just the classic song. You know, just a great song. You know, again, you've heard it a million times, but you never turn it off. Fighter Fall, a little slower, a little weaker, but then you get Cowboy Song, just a classic. Phil loves the American ideal, this Western cowboy thing, and the ranches in Mexico and El Paso, and just kind of this. You probably grew up watching cowboy movies and thinking America's all about cowboys. It kind of is sometimes. And then the classic, epic Emerald. Just a metal. I mean, is heavy metal invented with Emerald? It's inspired by an Irish traditional song. Great way to finish. A great album. Again, Gorham and Robertson. Robo on the guitars. Moving on, Johnny the Fox. So Fighting, Jailbreak, and Johnny the Fox come out in a 13-month period. This comes out in October of 76. Third album in 13 months. 7th record total. John Alcock produces it. Johnny, the opener. Just a great opener. drug dealer type of thing, prodding riff. Rocky's the next song, just a rock and roll stars, Rocky. And you know that Phil's Rocky. Borderline, ballad. I got it circled as one of the best songs. Co-written with Robo, although he's not credited. Phil's fighting addiction, clearly, to my opinion here. Don't Believe a Word. They're starting to fight with this lineup by this song. Who's writing what? Who's not getting credit? Is Robo not getting credit again? Don't Believe a Word is an amazing song. Don't believe a word because words tell lies. You know. Flip the album over, you got Johnny the Fox meets Jimmy the Weed. I mean, just so cool. Love this song. Doing the backstreet gangster thing. Phil loved that gangster thing and dealing with the streets, you know. Old Flame, just a perfectly timed ballad on this record. Massacre, I put Hell Yes, Robo, and Scotty. Huge solo drums by Brian Downing. Sweet Marie, a little soft with strings, and then Boogie Woogie Dance, just crushing guitars. Maybe not the lyrics as much, but the guitars and the music on Boogie Woogie Dance are incredible. Moving on to my second favorite. And again, this order could come in anywhere. And I already got people, they know what's coming. Renegade. This comes out in November of 81. It's a second record with Snowy White guitar. This is magnificent. It's recorded at Mercury in Toronto. This introduces keyboards to the band. Darren Wharton is on keyboards, and he changes the sound of this band. You know, it's a fantastic record. What do we got here? Angel of Death, immediately the keyboard sound. Full Core Lizzy, one of their best ever songs in my opinion. Heavy. Renegade's next, love it. Phil, The Pressure, just riff city. I mean, this is a heavy record. The Pressure Will Blow. And then the next song's even better, Leave This Town. Just incredible. You can tell Phil's in trouble. He's got to leave this town because he knows it's going to kill him. Maybe I'm reading too much into some of the things, but Phil's songs are biography, and he is crying out for help. And I know his mother, Philomena, is worried about him because she's listening to this stuff, and she knows, you know, Phil's going to tell her everything's okay, but flip the record over. Hollywood, Down on Your Luck, just a nice jam. Again, it's real. You can feel the realness on this record more than some of the other records where he's putting on the stance. No One Told Him, just on so many levels. You know, Phil's the best. You know, again, watch my show on Phil Lynott called The Outsiders, Phil Lynott. Subscribe to my channel if you like all this content. And then Fats. He's talking about, you know, Fats Waller, some jazz guy. He's even talking like, singing like Satchmo and doing this thing. It's so vibey. It's jazzy. Satchmo voice. Mexican blood. Again, he loves that American Southwest aesthetic. One of my YouTube mentors is a guy named Andy Edwards, and he talks about the English aesthetic. Maybe we're going to do a show on the American aesthetic, what the English rock stars think America is. And it finishes up with It's Getting Dangerous. Just a great way to end an incredible album. Again, Snowy White and Darren Wharton on keys really makes this my favorite Thin Lizzy album. Is their last album. It comes out in March of 83, and it's called Thunder and Lightning. So that's thunder hitting a Fender bass. I know you can't see it. Again, Darren on keys just really brings us in. This is their 12th album. This is the last album that they did. Another one of my mentors, Pete Pardo from Sea of Tranquility. He says, is this the best last album a band ever did? Well, your last album for lots of bands is weak. This is incredible. Thunder and Lightning, just their best song in 8 years. John Sykes is just incredible guitar. He was from Tigers of Pantang. After he leaves this, he does Slide It In with Whitesnake, and he does most of the songs on the 1987 Whitesnake album. This is the one as the next song. Just hook after hook after hook after hook. The sun goes down, breezy. Again, you're out on those plains, and there's so much attitude. There's so much guitar. Then Holy Wars. Sykes, Phil, Gorman dominate. You know, you still got Scott Gorman. You still got Brian Downey. You still got Phil, of course. And you got John Sykes now. You now have a heavy metal guitar player. This is really a metal album. Flip the album over. Complete dominance. Incredible at the highest level. Cold Sweat. Running down the back of my neck. I mean, it's just cold. Woo! Getting some goosebumps, man. This record is freaking amazing. Someday she's gonna hit back. Someday she is gonna hit back. Downey's just incredible. Sykes, the bridge in that song. And then Baby Please Don't Go. Not to be confused with other songs. Baby Please Don't, not that. It's perfect. Keys, rock and roll, the solo, full band on this song. Bad Habits. What could Phil be talking about there? Just full on Lizzy, Layers. Band's so tight. You know, I would argue after Gary Moore leaves in '79, Phil says, you know what, I'm having issues personally and divorces. And the divorces are in these songs, and the missing your children and feeling like an orphan yourself because your mother had to give you up and your father you never knew. Bad Habits again, and then finishes up with Heart Attack. And Phil basically finished up like that, dominating the 80s. It's a shame this is the last album. Again, my favorite record is Thunder and Lightning. Subscribe to my channel. Peace out. I appreciate each and every one of you that watch my shows. We're going to do stuff every day. It's going to run the gamut between jazz and pop a little bit. I'll do album reviews every week. I'll do concert reviews almost every week. See ya.